Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation presented by White House Custom Color.
Are you trying to mute me?
No, it's just real loud, and I can't.
I sold Amazon, but it was $25.
Listening to listen, not listening to respond.
Yes! Oh, thank you for that. You have something to show me today that I'm excited to see, because I know of it. I've known of it for a while. I don't know what it is or how it works exactly. So I would love to see it. Can you remind me? And well, anybody listening?
All right, so we are going to talk about range masking in Lightroom.
Yep.
And it is Lightroom, or you can do it in Camera Raw too. But I've always had a hard time understanding why Camera Raw is such a clunky, weird-looking version of what Lightroom does, because Lightroom is really simple looking, and then it goes to Camera Raw, and they've got all these silly little icons for things.
Well, it's like 10 or 12 years, it's almost like it's software from 10 or 12 years ago that they just kept. It's almost like, to me, it's built in that they get people to see that and think, oh, I need Lightroom, because Lightroom is this, but much better, right?
Right.
So it's like a funnel.
I guess.
Maybe it's a funnel.
It seems like it's a kid's toy. You know, like Camera Raw is the kids version. It's happy little icons and stuff,
yeah.
But Lightroom is just so much better organized. Anyway, I'm sure I just upset someone who loves Camera Raw, but anyway, so in Lightroom or in Camera Raw, you have the ability to do what's called range masking, and range masking is part of the localized adjustments area. So let me share my screen with you here so that you can see this tool in action. So give me a second here. So if you go up to the right hand side here,
we are in develop mode. I notice we are in develop mode.
Do you see it zoom in when I zoom in?
Yeah.
Or no?
Oh yeah.
So now you're looking at mostly the Okay, good, because sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah,
so
it's fancy.
Okay, so I'm zooming in here to the top section, which is actually right below the histogram. There's the brush, there's the radial filter, and there's the gradient.
Okay.
And everybody, hopefully everybody knows how to use those, but let's just start with a gradient because it's the easiest, simplest way to solve a sky or something.
Okay.
And so if I want to take this sky and darken it down a little bit, and maybe take the foreground and darken it down so that really we're focusing in on that root ball, I'm going to simply grab onto my gradient, start at the top and drag down. And I'm going to, if you go over here at the left hand side, there's a little area that says show selected mask overlay. So I'm going to click on that, and it's going to allow me to see all of my masking that's going on.
I like that tip.
You can see that it's 100% at the top and it's 0% at the bottom, and I can drag that down as far as I like. Now, in this case, because we're going to be doing some range masking, we can kind of break a lot of the rules. So normally, if you were using your gradient, you would be very careful about where it hits. Like, you don't want it to hit this root.
Right.
You don't want it to hit down here in the sand, because you're worried about the way it transitions. So if I were to do that, I'm going to turn off the selected mask overlay, and I'm just going to do a really horrible version of a burn. And you can see that it's getting dark up here, not dark here. It's 0% there, but it's covering the tree.
Right.
It's getting into the sand a little bit. So normally you would say, oh, I've got to, somehow do this, or maybe I have to go like this and burn this way, and then make another one over here to burn. So you're really kind of trying to avoid people seeing that you've actually done this. Well, in this case, what we're going to do is I'm going to just bring, instead of the exposure down, I'm going to bring the shadows down a little bit, and that just kind of richens up the sky. But notice that it's not really messing with the tree all that much, because I've chosen the correct slider to represent the stuff out here.
Right.
So I'm bringing that down. I'm going to play with the blacks, but now I also want it to be a different tone out, or a different hue.
Right.
And so I'm going to take the temperature and kind of play around with it, make it a little bit bluer a sky. I can take the magenta and increase or decrease it so that I get rid of any of the green in the sky. So I like the way the sky looks better now. And I could probably darken it down a little bit with the exposure as well. But again, it's going to start falling into this tree. Yep. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break the rules, and I'm going to grab the top and bring it all the way down. So now I've got this line. You can see the line if I drag it down into the, see that?
Yeah.
Well, I've broken the rule, but it doesn't really matter because now I'm going to go into the range masking, which is right below all of these tools in the adjustment area. It says range mask off.
Yep.
And if I click on that, I can choose color or luminance or depth if I'm using a cell phone, but that's like if you're really editing super, super severe on a 2 lens cell phone shot that's basically a JPEG or a whatever that IEF version is, right. You're really working hard on a piece of crap photo. So I know there are some people who are iPhonographers out there, right. And I probably just offended them, but I'm really into offending people about their chosen tools right now, apparently. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to click on color. And when I click on color, I'm going to get several options here. I get to, once I choose the color, I'm gonna choose the color with this little picker, the little color picker.
Okay.
I grab that color, and then I'm just gonna start at the top of the sky, and I'm gonna draw a box down to the bottom of the sky. So it's everything in that box is being chosen as a color. So it's a range of colors. Boom. Did you see the mask disappear?
I did.
Now let me turn on the mask so you can see it. See how the mask is completely separated?
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple places where the mask is still active in the depths of this tree. And I could go in and erase those out, but I don't necessarily have to. Plus, I've got this cool little amount slider over here. And that amount slider it's at 50% when you start, but if you go up, you kind of allow it to bleed a little bit more. For instance, you see a little bit of bleed going on right here in the shadows area of this branch. So if we want to get rid of that, I'm just going to go in and grab this amount slider. And if I go up, see how it bleeds into the branches? But if I go down, it stops bleeding because now I'm saying you can only, I'm making rules for the range mask, and I'm saying you can only go to blue that is this far off of the blues that I've selected.
Right.
And so it's targeting better.
It reminds me of
and
fuzziness.
Usually the best place, go ahead.
It reminds me of fuzziness. And if you're doing a selection in Photoshop and you do a select range.
Yes.
A range selection, it's like
exactly
fuzziness.
What it is. Yep, it's fuzziness.
Okay.
So if I take the amount way down, you can see that it's totally being targeted.
Yes.
No good. So 50% is usually a little bit too much. Usually somewhere around 40 or 30% is about where I find it does the right amount of selection. Now, the great thing is that, so I've already done that. So the sky, see how the sky is now, it's rich all the way across it? So it really pops that out.
Yeah.
But now I can actually put this little color dropper down, and I can take that range mask and I can bring it all the way down, and notice what it's doing to the reflections too. See how it's changing the reflections. So the reflections, anything that's blue in the reflections now. So I'm taking this entire gradient and I'm making it into a line and dragging it off the bottom. So now, instead of a gradient, it's literally the whole photograph is being range masked for blue.
Right, I get that now.
Okay, so now I've got this really nice sky. I've got these really nice reflections in the ponds. And so now I can go in and do another one. So I'm going to click New, and I'm going to make a new gradient, and I'm going to pull it up. And now I'm just going to go in and take the highlights and just bring them down a little bit so that that sand is a little bit less uber bright.
Now, this is completely different than the one you just made. Am I correct in noticing that the little gray circle at the bottom of your image is your other one?
Yeah, so this little gray circle is my other
Okay.
gradient.
Right.
And then I've created a new one, which is black, which means it's active.
Okay.
And so now I just pull it up until I can go the opposite direction and pull it all the way up here, but I don't really need to. And I kind of want it to get brighter as I get to the
tree.
To the tree itself.
Right.
So I'm just kind of pulling it up, and then I can do whatever I want to it, even kind of make it a little bit more warm, or or maybe I want to make it a little less warm so that it matches the tree a little bit more. And then I can do the same thing and color range mask that and just say I only want to deal with colors that are of that nature.
Right.
And now it's going to avoid the blue.
Mm-hmm.
See how it's avoiding the ponds?
Yep.
And I can use the same amount slider and I can avoid even more of the ponds. So it spills a little bit into the pond, but now I've got completely independent sources that I can adjust the sky or I can adjust the sand completely independent of each other, just by simply increasing or decreasing the sand and the way it looks. So that's the introduction to a range mask. There are other things that you can do as well. Like, for instance, you could do it based on, so let's, let me do this one here. Okay, so I've got these two girls who are, I'm taking a portrait of them. And I think that, like right here, you can see that I've got nice white and the flash is helping to brighten them up.
Yes.
But there's a little area here and down here that they're a little bit too dark. Their dresses are too dark.
Right.
And so I want to brighten up the shadows just a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is, rather than go in with the paintbrush and try and paint, a mask that's perfect, I'm just going to do this. That's what I want to do. Oh, I want to get this too. So I'm just going to.
Yeah. Yep.
But you notice that I'm not being really targeted.
No.
Because I don't care. Because I've got plenty of I've got plenty of tools that'll allow me to do that really quickly. So I'm just painting them like that. And now I'm going to range mask again, but this time I'm going to choose luminance. The luminance allows me to determine how bright or dark I want it to affect. So I only want to affect it's a very targeted mid-tone range. And so what I'm going to do is, down in this area, I have what's called show luminance mask. And then below it, I've got a range, which is black to white.
Yep.
And then I've got smoothness, which again is that kind of fuzziness idea.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the luminance mask. So it's showing you, if I do black to white all the way, 0 to 100, this is what you're going to see as a mask. But if I change the range and I say, okay, I don't want any black in there, so I'm going to take it up to like above dark gray, you can see how the bushes and stuff are disappearing from the mask. And then I can take the highlights and say, well, I don't want to brighten up the highlights on the dress. So I'm going to take those down. And now you can see how I'm just targeting those little shadow areas that I was worried about.
Yep, I get it.
Which is a very small area. But it's done all the selection for me. So now I can turn off the luminance mask overlay. And then I can, and by the way, I can use the smoothness to increase the spread, or I really target it, but I kind of want it to be, again, it's kind of in that 30 or 40% range. So I'm going to turn off that mask overlay, and now I can just go in and say, well, I want to take the shadows up just a little bit, maybe take the exposure up just a little bit, and see how it's not affecting these highlighted areas right here. It's just affecting these darker areas, which is what I want to target. So then I can have more of a glow on these girls. So that's the luminance side of the range masking. But wait, there's more.
I was just okay. Perfect.
Because that, as easy as that was, that's way too much work for me.
That was hard. That was laborious.
It was. But can you imagine? All right. So, Jed, can you imagine if you wanted to do like a series? Because you got to look at this series. It's hilarious.
I'm already enjoying it.
Series, and this is what it looks like. So it's like little girl's upset. This one comes to comfort her, says, I'm going to swing you around. We're going to play swing, swing. And then she just throws her down. It's like she had a plan in her head, and she's like, and then whack, throw her down. But I want to do all of these in like a grid pattern and hang them in person's house, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So in order to do that, I would have to go in and then brush,
right.
Even though I didn't have to be super great about it. I'd still have to brush every dress. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to do that.
Now you're talking about too much work. Yep.
Way too much work. Mm-hmm. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these photos, and I'm going to make sure that my auto sync button is on. Mm-hmm. I'm in the develop module, auto sync is on, and I'm going to go into the circular gradient. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to click on the circular gradient, and I'm going to turn on this show mask overlay so you can see, and I'm just going to make a circle right here around the dresses, but I have to invert the circle. So I'm going to go right here and invert the circle. So now everything that's inside the circle is being affected.
Sure.
And you can change your feather based on how much you want it to do. I'm going to leave my feather fairly small because in the end, the range mask is going to get rid of the edge of the feather generally anyway. And then I'm going to turn on the range mask, and I'm going to do that same luminance trick that we did before, show the luminance mask, and I'm going to bring the gradient up, the range up and down.
Dial in your range. Yep.
Yeah, I'm dialing in my range, and it's just going to target those little shadow areas there. And then I'm going to move this guy until he's mostly covering just the dresses. I don't necessarily see how it's the gradient is actually helping me not get their faces all that much.
Right.
But it's still going to attack the shadows on their faces, which actually will probably work out pretty well for me anyway. So I just keep doing this until I get the right amount of effect on just that. And I'm really targeting a very small area, but you can see how it's coming off of their faces. Yep. It's just getting the shadows of those dresses. And there's some stuff in the background that's getting, but it doesn't matter. And then I can take my smoothness and I can change, how much it's getting. So now the beauty of this is once I turn this off and I change the exposure so that I brighten up those dresses, see how it's working on just the dresses and a little bit of that area out there in the greenery.
Sure.
But it's fine. It's working
That's
out
not a big deal, right?
For me. If I really wanted to avoid the greenery, I could do it this way too. I could go in and say, I want to do a color luminance and just drag across the dress like this. And then it would only affect things that were neutral to bluish.
A color range mask,
and
right.
So then when you look at that overlay, see it just selects their dress.
Yes.
So then you could do the same thing and say amount, bring that down. But see how it's affecting the whole dress?
Yeah. It's the whole thing.
Not a fan of the whole dress being affected. So I'm going to go back to my luminance version of it. And I'm just going to bring that smoothness down a little bit so that it targets those dresses a little bit more. I'm going to bring up the shadow a little bit more because we don't need as much of that. Or we need the shadow more. I'm sorry, going to bring the highlights down a little bit. Okay, so now I've got my dresses under control. So then I'm just going to turn off the selected mask overlay, and I'm just going to brighten it up a little bit. I like the way the dresses look now, and the brilliant thing is that if I go to the next photograph, and from here, instead of clicking on the next photograph like on the actual photo here, I'm going to click on the frame so that I deselect everything else and I just select the one photo.
Okay.
And now watch what happens. If I turn on this mask overlay, it has automatically found the shadows in every one of those dresses. See how it's following them. And if I were to grab this one and say, oh, you know what? They moved positions. I can take this and I can change where see how it automatically is looking for those shadows So now all I have to do is just kind of go like this. I can tilt this a little bit, and I can widen it out a little bit.
So this works
So now
initially because they were all framed fairly similarly, right? And so that mask was being applied globally, but geographically on the image, right?
Right. It was all geographically the same, but within the geographic circle, it was different in each one right as I was doing it.
Right, but it was
time.
applied geographically from the same spot on the image, and it worked in this case because it was all framed relatively similarly. Now, in this part of the series, you're going through and tweaking it just a little bit, but what you're tweaking is what you already want.
Each one of these a little. What's that?
What you're tweaking is what you already want. Like, you don't have to adjust that stuff anymore.
Right. Yeah, all I'm doing is saying, oh, they moved a little bit, so go over here and target that area.
Yes.
Oh, they moved a little bit, go target that area.
Yes.
And if like 5 of them already, if they moved on all 5 of them, like say these 2 right here, they actually moved in the same place. So I can just grab both, and it's doing them both at the same time.
Yep.
And then if I hit the shift key and I can change the size of that, right?
Yep.
And now, if I go there, see that one's changed as well. And then this one is back to what it was originally. So I can kind of retarget that one as well.
Right.
And I can just go through all of them. And then if I really wanted to go in and work extra hard on these photographs, which I don't, but if I did, I could then go into the very top area where it says new. So that would be making a new gradient, or edit, or brush. If I click the brush area here, then what I can do is come down to the bottom of the brush and say erase 100%. And then I can just come into this area here with my brush, increase the size of the brush, and then I can erase out anything I want.
I was going to ask about that. Yep.
So I can re-edit each mask, and just, if I really didn't want it to touch the grass or whatever, I could do all of that just free form. I don't have to be really careful about it. And then I'd go into this one and do the same thing.
And this is destructive to the mask though, right? Because you're erasing.
All it's doing is it's kind of locking in the mask now.
Right.
So it's saying, okay, if he erases out this and then I re-edit the luminance mask, it won't re-edit in here in what I just erased.
Right.
Because it recognizes, oh, he doesn't want that area of the mask affected. See how I got rid of their face?
Right. Well, so my point in asking that is you want to do you want to use the erase tool at the end. You don't want to have to adjust the mask anymore.
That's right. Okay. You use the erase mask after you've done most of your work, so that then it's locked in, and you just move on.
Yes.
But now, if we just look at the photo, you can't tell that I've been in there messing around.
Right.
And it did it automatically because it was looking for either a color or it was looking for a very specific type of color or luminance. So now, so a lot of the times what I'll do is, this is where it really comes in handy. So most of the time when we're doing a portrait session, so here's a portrait session, and let's say it's a senior portrait session, and we want to smooth the kid's skin because they have rough skin or they have some acne or something like that, and we want to sell the portrait. Yep. But it's hard for someone to buy a portrait when they don't look great in it.
Also that, yes.
So we want to smooth it. And this, for people who do boudoir, it would be a big deal because, all skin has to be kind of smoothed a little bit. And so fortunately, Lightroom, the new versions of Lightroom for the last couple of years have had a new option called texture. Is it called texture? Hold on. It's called, texture. So you can see it right here. We used to just have dehaze and clarity, but now we have texture.
Right.
Okay. So the texture is a great skin smoothing. Basically, they realized that people were using clarity as a skin smoother, and they realized that it was a little too much.
Yeah.
And so they did texture, which really only deals with the small, slight textures. It's really great for increasing texture in a landscape, but it's really great for decreasing texture
Yes.
in skin.
Yes.
So in this case, if I want to beautify someone and make them look better for the sale of the image, then what I'll do is I'll simply use the same method. So I'll click on, and you could do it with a brush, you could do it with a gradient, you can do, it doesn't matter what you do it with, but I'm going to use the circular gradient just because it helps me to target a person pretty well. So I'm going to take the circular gradient and I'm going to highlight the 3 images that I want to work on that are similar, but the arms and limbs and head are moving a little bit. And I'm just going to circle that person, make sure that I have the gradient showing and invert it so I can see where it's going to be. And I want to put it on the person there like that. And then I'm going to actually take the feather and go 0% feather because I really, well, maybe not 0, but close to 0.
Have a sharp edge.
So like you can see that it's a pretty hard edge because I want to be able to target her really specifically. And I don't want it to fall outside of, so I'm just trying to get her arms and legs and feet and all that in there.
Okay.
So then once I've done that, I'm going to go in and click on range, color, choose the color, and I'm going to zoom in on her. Hold on. There we go. And usually the best place on a person to get their skin tone is like the forehead or a cheek or something like that. So I'm just going to grab the cheek and I'm going to just go like that. Boom. So it got rid of the colors around everywhere except for on her skin. You can see there's a little bit here where the sun is striking her shoulder, a little bit in her golden hair, stuff like that. So now I'm just going to take the amount down and it's going to start to lose that. But notice that if I go too far, I lose the shadow of her arm, which is not good. So I got to pay attention to that. The shadow of her arm. Oops, I'm feathering. Hold on. There we go. I want to spill to the shadow of her arm right there. And now I've got a pretty good, see how it's not going to soften all of my surrounding everything except for the rocks. It's going to surround, it's going to do that a little bit. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go in and I'm going to take the texture and hopefully you'll be able to see this. I know that on the internet it's a little, it's a little hard to sometimes see exactly what someone's doing when you're looking on the internet. But I'm going to take the, I'm going to do a couple adjustments so that you can see it. So I'm going to take, in this case, I'm going to take texture way down so that it really softens up her skin. And then I'm going to take the exposure up just a little bit. And I'm only doing that so that you can see that I'm brightening it up. And I'm going to take, the other thing with skin, if you want to soften skin, bring the contrast down just a little bit because added contrast makes shadows more, especially when you're talking about wrinkles and stuff like that.
That's a good tip.
So I'm taking the contrast down, I'm taking the texture down. I took exposure up just so you could see it, that's not a legitimate thing that I want to do. And then I'm taking the sharpness down too, which is another little tip. So take the sharpness down just a little bit, and that helps get rid of some of like the inconsistencies on the skin. So once I've done that, I can zoom back out of this and see how I've adjusted her skin really well, and I can sell this. This is not the final adjustment. This is not the retouching that I'm doing. It's just so that when they see it on screen, it looks great. And the thing is that I've done it to 3 at the same time. Click on this one. She moved a little bit, but it follows her arm. You can see that it follows her arm. See, there, follows the arm.
It's all within there.
And then the next one follows her arm. So it's a brilliant way to get something done really quickly. Again, all I'm doing is just showing it to her. I don't have to go in and paint things out, or they're not going to see that.
So you're not even worried about the rock at this point. If she were to order this, or if this was something that you would go from pre-touching to retouching, is what we call it, then you would go back and in your final retouched version, mask out that rock.
Yeah.
Or
so then if
erase
she's
the
like,
rock,
"Oh,
the
this
mask
is my
on the rock.
favorite." Yeah, if she says this is my favorite image,
Yeah.
then I've got it partway done anyway.
Yes.
I would just come into this mask and say,
Right.
okay, now she wants me to really finalize it, and
Yeah.
I like the way she looked. I'm just going to erase out
Yep.
this area
The
of
dress, the
the rock. I'm
rock.
going to erase over here.
Yep.
I'm going to go down and erase out the shoe just a little bit,
Yep.
although it won't matter because it's actually looks fine that way. And then I'm going to go over here. And then if I get in really close to her face and I want to get the skin to stay, but and you notice that the eyes get cut out, which is nice.
Yep.
But I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the auto mask tool, which is right down below all of the size, feather, and flow. And once I've got the auto mask tool, I'm going to go in and just use that, and it's going to remove the mask, but it'll stop at her skin. So it does a really great job at seeing edges.
Wow.
And it'll get rid of stuff. So if I click on her shoulder here and I erase, it doesn't go past her shoulder. And if I want to erase right here by these trees, I go like this, it doesn't erase on her arm.
Right.
It just erases the green
So
trees
that auto
that I've been
mask
doing.
helps you get even more precise.
Right. So now I'm being really precise, like right here on her chest, right next to her arm.
Mm-hmm.
I just go anywhere I'm really close to her skin, I just use the auto mask. And then once I've got all the close to the skin stuff done, I turn off the auto mask, and then I just go in and finish out with a fairly wide and feathered brush and just do a real simple removal. And the thing is that it was already done before. All I had to do was come in and just finish it up. And now I can turn off that mask and I can get rid of that exposure increase, which I didn't want in the first place. But now I've got it done, and then it's just a matter of, I need to go to Photoshop to do this, that, or the other thing, or I don't, and I can just send it away.
Well, and again,
Plus, in this case, if she really liked it, I might say, you know what would be really great too, is if all of this greenery were just a little bit darker.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, I could come in and do another mask and just go like this, and then I could go in and range mask for green, and then just go like this. So then it just selects all of that green. And see how there's green out here? If I just come in, I've got the mask already made, and if I just bring it in like this, see how it's still auto computing so that I get the green behind her done too.
So great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now I've got all that green, but it's all selected.
Yeah.
And then I can change the amount. So just the lighter greens I want to bring in, and click on that mask overlay. And then I can just say, I want all of that green to be darkened just a little bit. And I want it to be a little bit more warm and a little bit more green. So it's just, and I could even come in and change the hue, by the way. And this is the newest thing in Lightroom since July, and that's the hue. So I can go in and grab the green, and I can increase, I can change the way the green looks too if I want it to just be a little bit more green or a little bit more yellow.
Well, and again, the important piece to me too, to reiterate, is that you are making these tweaks to an image that you are being paid for.
Correct. Yeah. So the main job of the range mask is, for me, is to get something done super quick so that a client can see what it would look like at, when they're looking at it on the screen, but they can't scrutinize it. It's not going to be a print yet. And then once they've ordered something, then I'm happy to go in and do it because they're paying me to do the Photoshop work. They're paying me to do extra, burn, dodge, this kind of stuff. But until they pay me to do that, I've done my job and I got paid for the shoot. I don't want to be spending a lot of time because that's just wasted time. If the client's not buying the print, why would I ever Photoshop it? Why would I ever edit it?
I get it.
And so it's nice to have a computer mapping the skin, mapping the sky, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, and get it done really quickly. And you can do it to 5, 10, 20, 30, 100 pictures at a time, because even if the bride is moving around, you can follow her.
Quick,
and it will
and
just
do it
keep
quickly.
following her as she moves.
Yep. I love it.
That's also, by the way, really helpful because we used it on this photo here, but this photo is also what a bride would look like. So
Sure.
this root ball is the same color as a bride's dress.
Yeah.
So if you target the blue sky and let's say you went out and shot a photo on the beach and the sky was really a bright blue, but you wanted it to be this dramatic dark blue, you could just do a gradient over the sky. And as long as someone doesn't have a blue flower on their lapel or something like that, you could just drop it over the blue sky, darken the blue sky a bit. And even if the bride is moving across the screen throughout the photo shoot, it would cut her out on every single one so that you could quickly show the bride, look, this is what it's going to look like. Which one do you want to put in the album?
Right. And then whatever one she decides, then whatever she decides, you go in and tweak it and tweak to your heart's content.
Exactly.
All right.
So that is my tip, which is the range masking options inside of Lightroom or inside of Camera Raw are probably the most important tool that I have inside of Lightroom to save time when I'm editing and dealing with trying to sell a print or trying to put something in an album.
It's a big deal
because it is the biggest time saver.
Yep. And those are the best things in my opinion. Like that's where you can really grow to love Photoshop and Lightroom, is because of that fact right there. Is the time savers that you can learn and implement and literally change your life as an artist and or as a parent, for one thing, because then that time that you have isn't being spent behind the computer as much, and it can be spent playing Monopoly like we do around here with my kids, who beat me now, by the way. My son is 7 and he beats me in Monopoly. And I don't try to help him anymore. I initially was helping him. No more. No more help from Dad.
That's the greatest, when your kid starts beating you and you're actually trying to win.
And I want to beat him. I want to beat him so bad, and he wins more often than I would like to admit, and it's very, very frustrating and humbling.
That's awesome. My kids don't have the patience for Monopoly, so they somehow got a copy of Monopoly that's faster.
You can play fast. Yes, you can. We do a couple we have some in-house rules that speed it up a little bit because yes.
Well, no, these aren't in-house rules. It's a new Monopoly game that's faster.
Well, there's a speed dice. There's a speed dice that you can use.
I don't know, something. Yeah. Anyway, they play the speed version of Monopoly because they don't want to sit around.
They're like, oh wait, this has been for 70 minutes. I'm gonna die.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I can't stand this. So, but when they do play Monopoly, the old one, it'll be sitting on our front table for 3 days because they just keep battling it out. Yeah. So,
hey, dude, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you joining me for an episode of Jed Learns range masking.
Did you learn something?
Yeah, dude, I did. I've never used that. Never used it. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Especially not in Lightroom anyway. I do stuff like that in Photoshop, but not in Lightroom.
It's really also, the other thing is that it's not just about saving time. It's really, really useful in doing things that otherwise you probably wouldn't do because they would take too much time, but allows you to really finesse an image. So some of the things that you can do because you're targeting a specific color or a specific range help you to be much more artistic in your expression as well. So it's not just about saving time. It's also about the ability to do stuff that otherwise is just too complex.
Well, but
especially, if you try and take this into Photoshop and do it, it's much more complex, and you're in there cutting and making masks, and this does everything.
To do this in Photoshop would be a lot harder. Yeah.
Well, I've told the guys at Photoshop, why on earth why don't you have a range mask in Photoshop?
Because they want you to buy Lightroom.
I guess. I don't know. But anyway, so that's my favorite little tool inside of Lightroom. So
thanks, dude. I appreciate it. Until the next time. See ya. Hey guys, thanks for watching this conversation presented by White House Custom Color on YouTube. Be sure to check out our other content and click that subscribe button right there. Right there. It's there somewhere.